अभी तो पर साल बरसा था, तो फिर 2 महीना होगा अभी बरसा नहीं, इसको कौन बता सकता है बरसेगा कि नहीं बरसेगा। कुछ नहीं करेगा वो, पानी नहीं है तो कुछ नहीं होगा ज़मीन में। फिर अब देखता है कोई रोजी मजूरी कहीं अपना पेट के लिए जाता है।
Changing rainfall patterns are already causing weather extremes, like droughts and flooding, that threaten people's ability to feed their families and can even lead to displacement. Yet these weather changes are some of the most important but least understood impacts of environmental change. While erratic weather has long presented serious challenges to people dependent on natural resources for their livelihoods, climate change is making livelihoods like farming, rearing livestock and fishing more difficult and risky. In response to these impacts and to increasingly fragile livelihoods, poor people around the world are on the move, either seasonally or permanently, to other rural communities with more favorable conditions or to cities to find work. While migration has been used for centuries as a risk management strategy, with good and bad results, it is becoming more common in many places due to the impacts of changing rainfall patterns in addition to other factors. In many villages, harsh conditions can force families to migrate, rather than it being one of many choices. In Jajgir district, in the Indian state of Chhattisgarh, for example, farmers produce one annual crop of paddy rice that is fed by the monsoon rains. So many people migrate part of the year with their family members to cities in other parts of the country to help them survive the hunger season. While this can have the positive effect of keeping husbands, wives, sons and daughters together, it can also negatively impact the children's education. Of people migrating in this area, only 2% migrate for educational reasons, with the rest migrating due to economic necessity.
रोजी नहीं जाते हैं, भट्टे में जाते हैं, मनोहरपुर, अरौल के रास्ते आगे, उधरे कमाते हैं, एक ही भट्टे में जाते हैं, सीजन में अपने घर चलाते हैं। सबको ले जाते हैं, तो हमारा बच्चा छोटा बैठा उधर, छोटा तो उधर ले जाते हैं, यहाँ कौन रखेगा? माँ हमारी है तो।
When migration disrupts children's education, it can lead to long-term negative implications for the future resources and social mobility of the households.
बच्चे लोग का पढ़ाई पढ़ते थे, बच्चे लोग को लेके चले गए, सर जी बच्चे का पढ़ाई नुकसान हो गया। अब हमको दोष दे रहा है बच्चा कि हमको पढ़ाए नहीं। हमारी बेटी वो भी बोलता है माँ आप इतने पढ़े हमको नहीं पढ़ाए।
Migration often disrupts households, as it can cause the care of young children and the elderly to suffer when families are no longer able to live together throughout the year.
अब हमका बेटुआ लोग चला जाता है, बपुरा लोग बाल बच्चा धर के, हम अकेले रह जाता है। अब घर में जो वो बाई मार दिया हमारा छोटा देवर, बपुरा चल नहीं पाता है, वो भी ऐसे, एक जो छोटा देवर मंझला देवर है वो भी ऐसे है, ऐसे हम लोग रहे रहता है। वो लोग जब उसको पेट के उभरेगा परदेश से तभी तो हमारे लिए भेजेगा।
यहाँ तो हम सोचते हैं कि सब चीज़ एक ही जगह रहो, आनंद लगे। और तुम अलग उधर चल दिया, वो अलग चल दिया, वो अलग चल दिया, इसमें तो सब जगह दुविधा है सभी को। इधर वो क्या कर रहा है, उधर वो क्या कर रहा है, तो सभी के मन में दुविधा है चारों को।
To support poor rural households like the Lahere family to make better, informed choices, Care International and the United Nations University embarked on a global study in 2011 in India, Bangladesh, Thailand, Vietnam, Guatemala, Peru, Ghana, and Tanzania. Where the Rain Falls seeks to understand how rainfall variability affects the food security and migration patterns of poor people, especially smallholder farmers, fishermen, and livestock owners.
Usually there are some misperceptions around the topic climate change-induced migration, or migration in general, actually. The first misperception would be that migration is bad. Migration is not necessarily bad in all the cases. It's actually case by case. And we really need to do much more research on that and see whether actually migration is an option for the people or whether they are forced to migrate.
While migration can create positive opportunities for work and a chance to send remittances home for some, for others, migration is undertaken as a means to survive, such as when there are no other options for food security but to move, or in emergency cases, where if people don't leave, their lives will be endangered. For those left behind, they are at risk of becoming even more vulnerable and trapped in a downward spiral of poverty, as their choices may be more limited due to a lack of resources, knowledge, or decision-making power.
What we actually found out in many case studies is that mostly the people who migrate are the men, the young men actually. In many cases, the people who are left behind suffer a lot, and who is left behind is usually the women, the children, and the elderly.
ये क्लाइमेट चेंज का ज़्यादा विपरीत असर महिलाओं के ऊपर ज़्यादा पड़ा है पुरुषों की तुलना में। उसके पीछे जो मुख्य कारण है, एक तो है कि उनका आर्थिक आज़ादी नहीं होना, यानी कि वो इकोनॉमिकली डिपेंडेंट है अपने फैमिली पर। दूसरा है कि लैंड ओनरशिप भी उनका नहीं है। अगर वो बाहर जाके काम करती भी है तो समाज उसे अच्छी नज़र से नहीं देखता, उसे बुरा मानता है। तो इस वजह से बाय फोर्स उसे उस गांव में अपने आसपास में जो भी रिसोर्सेस है उसका उपयोग करके अपने परिवार का भरण पोषण करना होता है।
In the Tanzania study, 8 out of every 10 households surveyed said that changing rainfall is threatening their ability to produce food. In such an environment, those left behind face limited options in feeding their families.
Niko peke yangu na wajukuu wangu na watoto wangu walioachwa na huyo baba. Sasa hivi hatuelewi kwamba tutavuna au vipi, kwa sababu mvua ndio sasa hivi imenyesha. Yakikauka, kuna watu ambao wafanya biashara ndio wanaleta huko, wanatuuzia sisi, ndipo tunapata makulaji yetu na watoto wetu. Kwa hali na mali unatafuta ambacho kitakupatia hela ili upate kula. Kama ukipata kama kibarua, unaenda kibarua, kipewa 500 yako, unaenda kununua kopo lako moja, unakula na watoto wako. Lakini zidi hapo hamna.
Poor women, men and children around the world are doing what they can to feed their families, as climate change and changing rainfall add to their hardships. But they are not only victims. Though poor people are coping with huge challenges day to day, they can be part of long-term solutions when empowered and equipped with better information, resources and livelihood options that take changing rainfall patterns into account. But lasting solutions will take more than local people and communities working to fix the problems. It will take all of us working together to enable positive change. Policymakers and practitioners can prioritize policies, programs and funds that benefit and enable the most vulnerable people to manage risk, increase their resilience, and diversify their livelihoods in the face of an unpredictable climate, especially poor women, smallholder farmers, and landless agricultural laborers. Civil society, the private sector, and individuals can support poor smallholder farmers, fishermen, and livestock owners by working together with them and their governments to ensure people can feed their families and build sustainable and resilient rural livelihoods. And the global community can enact policies for mitigation and climate finance that include ambitious targets and adequate funds. Policies that truly tackle the climate crisis by working with and benefiting the world's poorest people. CARE is already working with vulnerable households and communities to build their resilience to a changing climate, and will apply the knowledge gained from the Where the Rainfall study in its adaptation and advocacy efforts. Together with the United Nations University, other partners and local communities, we will also support more informed development planning with governments, civil society and the private sector to improve the lives of poor people in developing countries around the world. We all need to take action so poor people struggling to achieve food security can make informed, free decisions to stay or move as they strive to improve their well-being. Positive change starts now with better knowledge, stronger choices, and real solutions. Solutions based on knowing the impacts of how and where the rain falls.